Mate, did we watch a thing this week?
Yeah, we did.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to We Watched a Thing. You got your boy Billy and...
I'm glad you didn't say your boy, because I do not respond to that.
Because you're not your boy, I'm your boy.
It's... Oh, be whiter.
I am pretty white, aren't I? But I'm pretty fly for a white guy.
Sure.
How you doing anyway, buddy?
I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah?
We're kind of on point with where we're recording, aren't we? I can barely see you.
We are in a almost pitch black room with zero furniture. It does feel a little crow-like, doesn't it? And yes, it does fit the mood, because what are we talking about this week?
We have a request via the Patreon.
That's right. Every patron at $10 or more gets to request one movie every couple of months. And what did our friend want us to watch this week?
We've got a 90s cult classic in The Crow.
That's right, which you had seen, and I hadn't. So I was excited to watch it.
Yeah, feature film debut of Australian director Alex Proyas, friend of the podcast, who also made the excellent Dark City in the 90s.
Yes, and then made the less excellent iRobot.
Also made Gods of Egypt in 2016.
Yeah, that's right.
Woof.
Yeah.
I say not having seen Gods of Egypt, but...
I haven't seen it, but...
From all reports.
Yeah. And he was previously a music video director, which a lot of great directors start out that way.
The Fincher method.
Yes.
You might call it.
Yes. The Crow is a 1994 American supernatural superhero film directed by, as we said, Alex Proyas, written by David J. Schow and John Shirley, stars Brandon Lee in his final film appearance, as pretty much everyone knows. Also stars Ernie Hudson and Michael Wincott, and it's based on the 1989 comic book series by James O. Barr.
Yeah, comic book film before comic book films were a thing.
I mean, this came after Burton's Batman.
After Batman, yep.
And in fact, after Batman, you found a lot of studios like buying up lesser known kind of comic properties because they were cheap and Batman had kind of become a thing. So I don't think we would have got this without that happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, R-rated, which must have been one of the first ones.
Surely.
I mean, people rave about Deadpool. Oh, you were beat by like 24 years.
Johnny come lately.
So you had seen this before. How long had it been?
Yeah, it's definitely been a while since I'd seen it. This was a film where I kind of initially saw it after all the cool kids. And by cool kids, I don't mean the popular kids at school.
Yeah.
I mean the kids that I wanted to be at school.
Yeah, right.
Like for a while, I'm sure that for a while I was representing that I'd seen the film when I hadn't.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that would have happened.
Were you at any stage a goth? Were you a goth kid?
No, I wasn't.
No?
Way too boring.
Because this is one of those films, it's hard to separate and watch on its own on the basis of two things. One, obviously, is Brandon Lee's death, because everybody knows about it. And honestly, it's one of those things it's hard to say whether this film would have become a cult classic had that not happened. The second thing is the fan base. I remember at school those kind of kids who were into The Crow, and you know, it was the goth kids, the kids who would dress all in black and take sleeping pills at their desk and talk about how bleak life is, and it is hard to separate the movie from those kind of people.
Why do roses have thorns, Billy?
Like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. But so you weren't one of those kids.
No.
But that was who you aspired to be.
I wanted to be interesting enough to be like that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't.
You were the kid who played the saxophone.
Exactly. One of the things that this film's really missing, I feel,
is enough saxophone.
Is enough saxophone. Because this is one of the all-time great film soundtracks. It is killer.
I was going to bring that up. And not just the soundtrack, the score as well. The incidental score is great, but the soundtrack, I mean, you know I'm a giant Cure fan.
I was going to say, you've got the Cure writing a new song for it, for God's sake.
And when that song comes up while he's, you know, putting on the makeup for the first time and stuff, it's like, oh, fuck, this is great.
Yes, it is.
Such a good soundtrack.
It is so good. If you were in my group of friends and you didn't like the soundtrack, you'd have kept that to yourself.
Yeah.
You'd have got voted off the island if you spoke out against the soundtrack to The Crow.
I will be listening to this soundtrack on repeat for the next couple of days, I suspect, because it is a bloody good soundtrack.
You touched on it before. It's impossible to watch the film separated from the Brandon Lee of it all.
Yeah. Have you ever seen him in any other films? I believe that before this, he was just in a few martial arts films.
He hadn't done many. Yeah, only a handful.
He'd done 2 or 3.
Yep.
Are you a Bruce Lee fan?
Yeah, I went through a kind of a high school period of staying up late to
watching kung fu movies
on that channel that we had that showed them. Yep, I was into it.
Yeah, but so this, because this is the only time I've ever seen Brandon Lee. I mean, what are your thoughts on his like really only known performance?
It's not a complete performance. When he's good in it, he's bloody great. It's not consistent across the 90-odd minutes of the film.
Yeah, I think he's really good. But for me, the two standout stars in this are Ernie Hudson as the police officer, who is like, he steals every scene he's in. And the little girl, Rochelle Davis, who plays Sarah, she was fantastic in this film.
She had a good 90s undercut going on as well.
Super 90s.
Love it.
She's rolling around on that skateboard. I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember those days.
You know what I love about one of the when she's about to cross the road and someone's like yelling out at her, like, yeah, get off that thing, whatever. It's like, the city's on fire.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting murdered, but you've still found the time to get angry at a kid on a skateboard.
Yeah.
Bravo, you.
She was awesome. That was, she didn't act for 15 years after this role because she was so devastated by what happened to Brandon Lee.
Really?
Yeah, so she's finally only resurfaced in the very late 2000s.
Same haircut?
I think she kind of got into drugs and that kind of stuff. She was busted running a drug house with the Bloods and the Crips.
Whoa.
Yeah, no joke. And she was charged with, negligent parenting because her 3-year-old was living in the drug house.
Oh, so she was living the art of the film.
Yeah, that's right.
One thing that distracts me a bit about Lee's performance is that there are times, just the odd shot, where he really reminds me of Bruce Campbell. And so I'm looking at it, and this is like, it's not that long after certainly Evil Dead 2. In fact, it would be about the era of Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
And there's the odd shot where I just expect something funny to happen.
It's got a couple of funny lines. I love when the big bad guy is doing his impression of the Crow. Car, bang, oh fuck, I'm dead.
I have a note here about that.
Yeah?
It's like the bad guy's impressions are almost as good as Billy's.
Hey, come on.
It's cool that this movie, just straight from the beginning of the film, it just drops you straight into it.
That's one of the things I love most about this movie. It's a nice, tight hour and a half before the credits start to roll. You're not bogged down with all this backstory about who these people were before it happened. You start with them being murdered, and any sense you get of who Eric or Shelley was, you get through flashbacks.
Yeah.
And I love that because you know that he was a decent dude.
You find out that he's a rock star with a heart of gold. I
really like that characterization and the development of that it's not bogged down with who these people were. It doesn't matter who they were. She's dead. He's the Crow.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
And you kind of do we've seen plenty of origin stories. This kind of does it, but it does it in 60 seconds.
Yes.
And you don't feel like you're missing out on anything.
No.
Oh yeah, Crow, yep, alive, whatever. Not really a crow, it's a raven.
Yeah.
Every time you see the Crow in the film, it's a raven because ravens are bigger and scarier, and they're like, fuck it, let's use a raven.
That's why I do love then when he's quoting the raven later on in this film, and I'm like, he knows it's a crow, right?
Yep. Nice subtle last name they use for him, isn't it? Draven. Eric Draven. Because he doesn't have a last name, I don't think, in the the source material. Oh, he does?
He does, yeah,
but it's not
Draven.
Is it?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I read something that lied.
And in fact, so the source material, though, much like I understand the film franchise goes on to be,
shit.
Well, the Crow is obviously the Crow, and the hero of the story changes. Because
whoever
obviously
the Crow picks.
Once the person has enacted their revenge, then the Crow moves on to someone else.
That's right. Their story's done, so...
Yeah, and I actually really liked that about the film, that it's contained. You'd struggle to call it a superhero story because he's not really saving anyone apart from the little girl.
It's just a vengeance tale, yeah.
Yeah, it's a revenge story at its core, but I think it's one of the best comic book adaptations, certainly of the 90s. Geez, Brandon Lee was jacked, wasn't he? That first scene where you see him without his shirt on, it's like, fuck, I feel inadequate.
He's seen the inside of a gym, that guy.
I mean, it doesn't take much to make me feel inadequate in the body department, but Jesus Christ, made me want to die and come back to life if that's what I get to look like.
Don't think that's what does it.
Really?
Yeah.
So you don't think the Crow would just give me mad abs?
I don't think that's how it works.
Damn.
I feel bad for him. You mentioned Michael Wincott earlier, the baddie. He had this run of 3 years where he's the bad guy in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
He's the bad guy in The Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
He's the bad guy in this because, unfortunately, if you look and sound like Michael Wincott, you're the bad guy.
I was going to say, maybe he should have got a haircut. Look at that long, greasy hair.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's actually quite luscious.
Oh, no.
There's a couple of shots where I'm like, man, you put a fan on him and you can sell some Pantene.
He's practically Fabio. Oh, I don't know, man. It's so long. And it's the way that it's, like Brandon Lee has long hair. It doesn't look as villainous. When your hair is slicked back like that, you're a bad egg. That guy, he's going to play a villain.
I do think in one of the flashbacks we get of Eric and Stacey together.
Shelley,
thank you. It's a wonder he hadn't already killed her. The amount of candles that were lit and unsupervised in that loft they live in.
Yeah, and the whole film kind of centers around arson as well.
Yeah, asking for trouble. One of the reasons why this film was so loved by a certain crowd in the 90s is that the style of the film, if you're into this particular style, is just awesome. Like, it is just a brilliant looking film.
I was going to bring that up. I think it's shot beautifully. And I think this really sets the tone for so many, comic book adaptations that came after it. The way that the whole tone of the film, because the source material is black and white. And even though this film is in color, there is so much blackness to it.
I was going to say, it was no surprise to me when I found out that the director wanted to do it in black and white with the odd bit of color in there. And when they said no, he basically did it anyway.
He really did.
The film mostly lives in black, white, and red.
Yes, and the lighting is so well done in the film. Like, we spoke I think it was when we talked about The Favourite, we spoke about kind of that sparse, realistic nighttime lighting. And this totally nails that, I think. A lot of use of kind of strobe lights, and a lot of the film is literally pitch black and until a light just shines. And I think it looks beautiful.
Like, there's shots in it which are, like, they're trying very hard, but you know what? I'm into it. Like, you think about the shot of him walking towards camera shot through the flame.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a really kind of film schooly thing to do, but fuck it. It looks cool.
It just looks awesome. Yeah. And then things like the flashback segments being so oversaturated and like they're not sepia, but there's lots of warm tone to them and stuff. And that's just something that's been stolen so many times since this film. Like, you think of a flashback, that's what you think of.
And the look of Draven himself once he's come back.
Yeah.
When just like any shot of him like squatting, sitting, anything, like it's just cool.
Yeah.
He wasn't in love with the makeup when it had been applied.
Yeah, right.
And so he and the director decided that he would do the makeup himself. Apparently, this is what I've read anyway. Can't back it up. He would do the makeup himself of an evening. Then he'd sleep in it so that it would get worn.
Yeah, right.
And turn up to set, ready to shoot.
Interesting.
Which is one of a few things that watching the film really reminded me of Ledger's Joker.
Oh, you can easily see where Ledger's inspiration for Joker came from.
Riddled with nods to this film, I think.
Yes, the entire thing, from the characterization and the writing, the makeup, and the performance itself, you can see where it all stems from this film. I mean, even things like, I think the set design and everything is so Gotham-esque. It's reminiscent of Burton's Batman, but I also think where you can see, later comic book films that have that darker tone have looked at this.
Yeah, certainly with the climax of the film as well at the church.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of the 89 Batman film.
It's amazing how much this movie can feel like a comic book film and yet at the same time feel like a hard R drama. When you look at recent times where we haven't had an R comic book film for a very long time until recently with Logan and Deadpool. Deadpool is an R because it leans so much into the comedy aspect, really. It's that over-the-top.
It's a language R.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas to see a film like this that is an R and a comic book, it'd be nice to see more films like this, I think.
Which presumably we'll get with Spawn.
Yeah, this film was very reminiscent of Spawn to me, and I would love to see Spawn done in this fashion.
Now, the film it's a long way from being without its faults. Like some of the lines in the script are pretty horrible.
I don't know, man. Maybe it's just because I'm so nostalgic for the 90s or because I love The Cure so much, but I had such a good time watching this movie. I really loved it way more than I thought I would.
There's some conversations where I'm like, can we get back to just talking badassery to bad guys, please?
I don't know, man. I really loved a lot of the dialogue. I thought Draven's dialogue himself, he swings between being so poetic and being basically violent Spider-Man. Like some of the quips and stuff he pulls out when he's killing people.
Smell?
Yeah, like, that was amazing.
Yeah, that whole scene is awesome.
That scene is awesome. I loved his first murder as well, of the guy in the alley. And then, like, I can't remember what the line is, but later on he says something, and then you cut to the guy being pulled out of the alley just covered in knives, like knives from head to toe.
I do love the reference to that later on in the film when they mention that he had knives stuck into his organs in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
I love that occurred to someone to write.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the dialogue I actually find a bit,
oh yeah.
But then some of it, I mean, there's a few things about the film that I find uneven in the performances, the script and everything. When it's great, it's great.
Yeah, right.
And there's times where I'm like, I'm still having fun on balance, but
tell me what those are. See, because to me, I thought it was shot consistently wonderfully the entire way through. I was on board with most of the performances and most of the dialogue. Yeah, I just had a really good time.
Not a lot visually. I find the ramming down your throat of just how in love they were and how great they looked after this street kid kind of thing. I'm like, okay, like whatever.
I get that.
And yeah, other than that, it's kind of just some of the dialogue. I'm like, oh, yeah, no.
Is it because it's so 90s or is it just because it's bad?
I think it's because it's bad. I have no fault with something being 90s.
Yeah. I mean, here we are in our flannel shirts. And So let's talk about the death of Brandon Lee. Do you know how it happened?
Yes.
Yeah, like you know the details of it?
Yes.
I didn't. All I knew was that it was a faulty prop gun. And I assumed that it was a blank that killed him.
Which it indirectly
kind
did.
of.
Yeah, there was still a bullet left in the chamber and the arms master had gone for the day and they were still shooting and
yeah, there was still something left. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, if you're going to be firing guns on set,
and there are a lot of gun firings.
Maybe make sure that the arms master is still there.
I mean, there's probably over 200 times a gun is fired at Eric Draven in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, of course they got sued by Lee's mother and you're like, yeah, you don't have a leg to stand on.
No, not at all. And in fact, the director was so devastated. He didn't want to finish the movie and then it was Lee's fiancée, so I think she was just his wife, who came and said, no, he was really proud of his work in this movie and I think you should finish it.
There's nothing fortunate about it, but that it happened in the shoot when it did and that they could actually
that's still 3 days left.
Still complete the project is, and for its time, the special effects work they do is amazing.
That's what I was just going to say.
The scenes where it's not him do not stick out.
I actually can't even tell. I couldn't tell you which scenes were actually him and which weren't.
Yeah, there aren't many, but there are scenes where it's a body double and they've put his face on there. Yeah. Which, with early to mid-90s technology, you would imagine would stick out like dog's balls.
That's what I was going to say. That's the same fashion that they did it for Paul Walker in Furious 7.
Yeah, but with 20 years practice.
20 years practice, and even then, there's probably at least 1 or 2 scenes where you can tell. Now, obviously, there's a lot
to do
more.
It in the dark.
Yes, yeah, and obviously there's a lot more shots in that film. I think there were about 350 shots of Paul Walker, and in this there's probably only a handful, but it was still very, very well done.
I did read that because they had a cast of Lee's face, and so
that would have helped.
Their initial idea was that they would do a Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible thing. They'd put a mask on someone.
Wow.
Which apparently they tried, and everyone just found it so fucking creepy that they were like, no, get rid of this thing. Everyone's just freaking out.
I can imagine that would be confronting too after working with this person and they've just died and there's someone wearing their face.
Yeah. And if they were still doing the amount of coke on set that apparently they'd been doing for the entire production, then it'd be...
Really?
Oh, apparently it was rampant. I read one thing where someone once sneezed on set and Brandon Lee said, someone just lost $50.
That was the 90s. It was a very smart decision to shoot it so much in darkness, not only because it leans into the source material and visually it's very nice, but in terms of hiding special effects, most of the effects in this film hold up amazingly well for a nearly 25-year-old film.
Yeah, they do. Apparently at one point they were going to change from I think they were moving the shoot indoors, essentially, to sets rather than locations. And the budget was so tight that they couldn't, even once they were indoors, they just had to keep shooting at nighttime because they couldn't afford the kind of 36-hour changeover from going from nighttime hours to daytime hours, because the budget was, I mean, it's not a tiny budget, but for what you would expect a comic book film to have, it's tiny.
Yeah.
Because they'd spent it all on coke.
Yeah, that wasn't white makeup on Brandon Lee's face.
No, he's just gone like Scarface style
into a mountain. I mean, so you said that he didn't like the makeup. What are your thoughts on the makeup?
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah. Was goth makeup big before this film? I know that, like, as a huge Cure fan, I know that Robert Smith often wore makeup, but I don't recall him doing the full white face thing, which is now very common.
The timing would be interesting.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how much this influenced goth culture.
Yeah.
Because I know that it, like, goth exploded in the 90s and early 2000s. And I think a lot of that must be due to this movie.
Marilyn Manson took a look at it and went,
yeah.
There's my look.
Yeah. Interesting choice to go with the makeup, because in the source material, his face is so white because he's dead.
Yeah, of course.
And it's interesting. That was the one scene I was like, when he popped out of the ground and he just looked so hot, just these ripped abs, and just, like I would have jumped on him there in the grave and just rolled around with him a bit.
Hasn't seen sunlight in an hour, a year.
Yeah. Interesting choice to have him look so, the term is going to sound stupid, but undead.
Could have gone full rotting flesh style.
Yeah.
Because he would, like, he'd be a zombie if you did it, if you wanted to, like, lean into the realism of it, he'd come out zombie-like.
Yeah.
Or skeleton-like. How long does it take for all your flesh to rot away?
Oh.
I mean, the worms are having at it.
I was going to say, it's got to be less than a year, surely. You'd be a skeleton in less than a year.
I have no idea.
Well, famously, I know nothing. I do have
I'll tell you what does know, the internet, and it's never wrong.
How long does it take to become a skeleton boy?
Not long in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
When buried 6 feet down without a coffin in ordinary soil, an unembalmed adult normally takes 8 to 12 years to decompose to a skeleton.
Wow.
However, if placed in a coffin, the body can take many years longer depending on the type of wood used. For example, a solid oak coffin will highly slow down the process.
So he'd be in pretty decent nick still.
He would be in decent nick. Yeah.
A 1 year dead Brandon Lee would still be more attractive than us by some way.
He'd probably still have more muscles, easily.
Oh, his definition would still be rocking.
Yeah. There you go, good realism.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad I watched this movie, and this is a movie that I'm going to tell you right now, I'll rewatch.
Yep.
I could see myself watching this once a year. I thought it was really fucking good.
That's cool.
Yeah. What are you scoring it?
I'm going 7 out of 10.
I'm going an 8.
I really enjoy the film. I think it's unquestionably, I feel that it is style over substance, but the style's so fucking cool that I don't care.
The style's so good. Like, we haven't even spoken about the shots of the crow itself. I think they're beautiful. The close-ups of the crow, the shots of it flying. That's got to be... There's no way that's a real bird.
I think they had birds on set.
Just real trained birds.
Yeah.
That's crazy cool.
Missing an eye, though, in the middle of its forehead. From most of the ones I've seen on the telly.
Because you've been watching a lot of Game of Thrones through Eric Draven, I get it. Good joke, mate.
There you go. There's a freebie.
Yeah, I was a fan. I'm going with an 8, and I'll watch it again for sure.
Yeah. Thank you to our dear patron who told us to watch it.
Yes.
It was enjoyable.
Thank you. We loved it. What are we getting to next week, buddy?
We're into sequel territory.
Yes.
It's Glass.
Which I am so excited for. Long-time listeners might remember that Split was one of my top 5 films last year. And, man, I can't wait for this. I hope it's as good as either Split or Unbreakable, because both are brilliant.
I'm hoping.
You've seen the trailer, haven't you?
I saw the teaser trailer. I haven't seen anything. I've managed to avoid everything since.
Okay, because I haven't seen anything to do with it other than a poster.
I'm hopeful, but for reasons that I can't put my finger on, not that confident.
The kids, they call me Mr. Glass.
What, was it Michael Jackson who said that? Do you know that originally the studio wanted to do the film, The Crow that is, as a musical with Michael Jackson?
That can't be real.
And someone, laughed at them thinking it was a joke.
That can't be real.
Apparently that's real.
Because of Thriller? Is that why?
I guess.
Wow.
I guess. They got laughed at
That's messed up.
because the person assumed they were joking.
Well, they should have been laughed at.
It was the correct response.
So in the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle @wewatchedathing. If you want to help support the show and tell us something that we have to watch, like our dear friend did this week, you can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing. And in the meantime, what should people do, Toph?
Go watch a movie.
Go watch a movie. I say that. You don't say that.
Anything else you want to take from me?
No, look, I will tell people, though, if you really want to help support us, tell 3 friends about the show, have them tell 3 friends, and then them tell 3 friends until we spread like a virus. It's not a scheme. It's shaped like a triangle, less than a pyramid, and it just really helps support us.
Should they also rate the show, Billy?
If you want to rate the show, that'd be a great idea.
Only if they're going to rate it well?
Yeah, if you want to give us 5 stars, go ahead, give us 5 stars. That's a great idea, Toph. Good thinking.
Nailed it.
Leave us a review as well, a positive one.
Yeah. None of this normal internet stuff.
Yeah, don't be mean to us.
Not interested.
Catches.